Oh my god, happy Halloween! I mean, it's not Halloween by the time you're watching this, but just do it for my sake, okay? It's been a very, very rough month, and if you know me, you know why. But I mean, happy Halloween! And for my Halloween special, I mean, technically the Halloween movie, I mean, the horror movie tier list was the Halloween special, but this is something different, as I'll be talking about, something that I've always been intrigued with, internet horror. So basically, I've been observing the horror side of the internet for a whole decade now, and I've seen things grown so much over time, from the early 2010s of the Slenderman era to the backrooms of today. And like a lot of it relies heavily on the uncanny feel. A helpful way to kind of describe the feeling internet horror gives off is by bringing in the uncanny valley theory, which is the area between something realistic and completely fake, with it basically having that weird sense of realization we're looking at something that's just a bit off. It's mainly used when describing robots that look human enough for you to notice, but you can tell that they aren't, if that makes any sense. I'm mainly using that as an example to say that a lot of internet horror relies on that same sensation that you get from the uncanny valley. This subtle feeling, though, is often exploited, as I'll be talking about throughout this video, to an extent to where it's no longer scary and it goes over to a certain side of the scale that makes it not scary, at least not in the way that it originally was. This video will be exploring all these niches and some of the other ones that have reached the point of no return. And we might as well start with the legendary and iconic Slender Man. He was really the first one to catch the public eye as this cryptid that people would add lore to make it seem more real. This urban legend would be spread with real images, with Slenderman being snuck into all of these images, giving it that realism effect. There were also games developed around the idea of being stalked by this cryptid, collecting vague notes that illustrate some kind of lore that people can engage themselves with. The grounded location of the forest also brought that sensation of realism, as anyone could truly end up in a situation like this. I mean, not really, because he's not real, but you get what I mean. This also got very exploited throughout the years because it's a very basic formula, and it was used many times and in many different ways, with Slenderman being put in different areas and whatnot. Hollywood even had the little turn with him and try to make a franchise off of him years after his peak in relevancy, basically cementing Slenderman's death. Rest in peace, he will be forever remembered. Another little niche on the internet would be known as creepypastas. And you know, this is one of the internet niches that I personally think will never truly get old with how creative the genre can be throughout time to time. I mean, recently, if you've heard of the Flesh Park and like the realistic descriptions that come with that story, really showcases the creative and talented people that are on the internet up to this day. The descriptions of some of the other creepypastas are just absolutely harrowing and can create that realistic atmosphere that just really brings the reader in. Some of these stories just seem way too real, like the one where like many people connect on seeing this TV show that like actually never existed at all, or like the other one that's like based off of human experimentation that has influences from real life, like actual things that have happened in the world. You know, the variety of stories that are told here are sometimes truly remarkable, although I would be lying if I said it was a truly flawless niche. With every one really well-written story, you'll get like 10 stories made on lost episodes that involve hyper-realistic descriptions of gore, which, I mean, work for the genre, but like, ugh, lost episodes of shows that claim to have existed at one point is technically a way to make it seem more real. I mean, you can't prove that this doesn't exist, so it's automatically spooky. And I mean, I'll give like a good example of something like this. The clown from The Amazing World of Gumball. If you know, you know. But basically, that's like one of the creepypastas that like actually got me, because it's like something that actually could have happened, and maybe it did happen. I'm too scared to find out if it really did, though. So, but some other creepypastas, or one major creepypasta I want to talk about because it uses this notion really well. I would say Backrooms. You know, it's absolutely like best usage of this uncanny theory that I'm talking about, with how realistic it tends to be in terms of the images that were used and the lore that was designed around it. The usage of liminal spaces gives you that sense of just feeling off, like these images of areas feel familiar as if you traveled through it before. People truly use these feelings to its fullest extent when creating the existential horror that is the backrooms. It is like just these like room after room of just liminal spaces that goes on forever without an end in sight, and you have no idea how you got here, creating that sense of dread that truly never goes away. The loneliness and utter silence caused by the isolation in these rooms also adds to the atmosphere, which encompasses this uncanny horror perfectly, something so subtle yet terrifying. Well, at least until the internet does what the internet does best, which is ruining it with in-your-face shock value that does nothing to add to this type of horror, which was also seen in analog horror, which was also a very popular niche on YouTube, where there would be these intriguing ways of basically scaring people with interesting ways of storytelling. Some would be presented as like these news stories, and they were pretty fun at first. There would also be other ones that like would utilize distorted images and like hidden lore as ways to get people engaged with the content itself. Also a shit ton of jump scares, but just it's for another video. I'm not gonna get into it, but basically this genre just has seemed to kind of fall off a bit with the oversaturation and you know, memeableness of some of the distortion. Just people quickly got tired of this genre really fast. It fell into the trap of continued cliches that the internet just ripped apart and was placed into the shock value for sake of its pile. ARGs. These are internet experimentations that involve cryptic posts that pull people in. Oh my god. These are internet experimentations that involve cryptic posts that pull people in with this puzzle that they can solve by finding all the posts and making connections with all of them. This has been a long tradition on the internet for quite a while, with some pretty big ones here and there. Some come as regular videos or social media posts that someone could accidentally fall into because it just seems like any normal post, until they look a bit further into it and fall into a rabbit hole. This is one of the niches that hasn't been too annoying, because it's very difficult to pull something like this off, and takes tons of dedication and just waiting just for that slim chance of enticing someone. You would really have to be lucky and very talented to do something like this. And the very last thing I want to talk about would be indie games, because I feel like indie games, holy shit, oh my god, what the fuck, like the indie games are like kind of like this huge pile of different types of content that reaches into different niches overall. A lot of these games are derivative of something previous, but it all feels somewhat different from each other. Some depend on the very creepy atmosphere or subtle hints of like a deep well of lore in order to engage with the player. The uncanny sense mostly comes from the graphics used in these games, with a lot of them being reminiscent of something older, like Baldi's Basics, with how it looks similar to old school games, and Five Nights at Freddy's, that's like one of those clicky click games. So many of these games have like grounded gameplay that truly keeps players on edge and focuses on limiting their experiences to whatever the game developers want it to be. Although it is a bit of a shame, because like I said before, this happens to become a very oversaturated medium filled with games that copy from one another, although once again, cream rises to the top, influencers shout out the good games that they like, blah 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 blah. The conclusion of this video is basically the internet has very intriguing ways of, the internet is terrified of very specific things. And these specific things happen to be very simplistic, to the point where it's very easy to add to it, basically giving it all kinds of like depth. Although the depth does come with, a warning, or like a really bad side to internet horror overall, because of, anyone truly can add to these internet niches, which means they could either be very easily exploitable with people trying to find ways of just making money or becoming popular, or children just not knowing any better, like you looking at the backrooms and how they added like looking at the back rooms and seeing all the spooky monsters that they've added for no reason at all. So overall, it's a very interesting cycle that has continued on the internet for quite a while now, and I just wanted to just kind of bring that up because I don't have time to make any of the other videos I wanted to, so leave me alone.